Hi, Ryan White is filling in for Buck. Welcome to Discovering. In the fall of the year, there's probably no place better to be than the UP. And there's no shortage of good reasons to get out in the woods. Probably one of the most overlooked is turkey hunting.
There's all kinds of misconceptions about fall turkey hunting, but the great thing about it is just getting out in the woods and being here at one of the most beautiful times of the year.
And we'll take a trip to the smokehouse to find out how to turn this into this. That's all tonight, right here on Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone, forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak, surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields, call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill, the eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Differences between spring and fall turkey hunting. Your chief difference is spring turkey hunting is centered around the breeding season. Gobblers are actually much easier to call in the spring, and you can make hen calls to get them to come in. And a hen call would sound something like this. This is on a box made by Marlin Watkins of Ohio, one of the best box makers in the United States. I'm not one of the best box callers in the United States, but this is one of the better boxes you'll ever see. That's a hen yelp. In the fall, you would make, if you want to get a gobbler, you'd probably make a gobbler yelp, which is coarser and slower. Something like that. We roosted these birds today. They came right past me, well within shooting range, but I decided not to shoot. To me, they were too bunched up. I wasn't sure of my target, and I decided not to shoot. That's a valid choice for any hunter. And each person has to make that decision for him or herself. Fall turkey hunting is about the flock. And we could see that today with all the birds. That was a flock basically of jakes. There might have been a few hens in that. I'm not even positive. But it was mostly a band of jakes. But they were sticking together. And that is one of the characteristics of fall hunting. And in the fall, people don't understand this, but we heard gobbles today and we heard all kinds of vocalizations. In the spring, you'll basically hear a lot of yelping and cutting and clucking from the hens. And gobbling from the gobblers and the jakes. But it can run the gamut in the fall as well. Different methods of fall hunting include just sitting, pretty much like we did. Now I called a little bit, I called sparingly. So it wasn't an ambush per se, but we pretty much knew where the turkeys would be, and it might have been possible to get a shot without even calling. I've killed birds that way. I've also killed them using minimal calling. One of the things you can do in the fall to take advantage of the way birds want to be in a flock is you break that flock up. You can run out, clap your hands, try to get the birds going in as many different directions as possible. And then what you do is you sit down at the assembly point where they were and you try to call them back to you. They will want to come to sounds and get back together. Now, some people say if you're hunting gobblers, they may come back in 3 days, but that's not necessarily so. Sometimes they'll come back right away. There are a lot of misconceptions about fall turkey hunting. That's one of them. But you can do it on your own, or you can hunt with dogs, and you can even do that in the Upper Peninsula and in Michigan. You've got to read your regulations. It's regulation. You can take a dog out, and the dog is there to break up the flock. And then the dog's there to sit quietly while you call it back in. So that's one of the methods. So your basic 3 methods are, not calling at all, calling sparingly, if possible, and breaking up the flock and then calling the flock back in. And you can take, you can do that with either gobblers or hens and poults. That's something else that people don't understand about fall turkey hunting is you can take either a male bird or a hen. You break wild turkeys up in the woods because you want to call them to the assembly point. And if the assembly point was the middle of a field, you are not going to be able to camouflage yourself from the turkeys coming in. Your idea here is to be covered while they come in to the assembly point. Let's talk a little bit about the equipment we used on today's hunt. This, of course, is a shotgun. It's a Remington 870. On it, you'll notice I have a pretty much full-size Nikon Turkey Pro scope. And it's got a great reticle on it. And I really like it. But on this particular gun, you've got to make sure you don't crowd that scope. I've got a couple stories about that. When I first started, I was told by one of my turkey hunting teachers to use 3.5-inch shells. And you know what? They work great on killing turkeys. And if you want a black and blue shoulder, then use 3.5-inch shells. The older I get, the smaller the shells got. So now I've gotten from 3-inch shells to 2 3/4-inch shells, It makes the gun kick less. It's a lot easier on my shoulder, and there's less chance of getting nailed by the Nikon Turkey Pro scope one more time. One of the problems with fall turkey hunting is every other kind of hunting that just about is going on at just about the same time. You've got bow hunting going on now, small game hunting going on now. You probably won't have as much flexibility on private land as you would in the spring, but just like in the spring, it's good to get as many places to hunt as you can and as many backup plan B places to hunt as you can. There's all kinds of misconceptions about fall turkey hunting, but the great thing about it is just getting out in the woods and being here at one of the most beautiful times of the year.
Surrounded by the Great Lakes, the UP is a jackpot for lake trout and salmon. One of my favorite ways to eat them is smoked, and a good friend of mine makes some of the best I've ever tasted. So I paid him a visit to find out just what's involved in smoking fish.
Well, I got a friend of ours there. He got a bunch of salmon, and he called me up the other day and wanted some smoke. So what I mix up for the brine is, or the seasoning or brine, whatever you want to call it. I just take the brown sugar and I add salt to it. It firms up your fish or meat, whatever you're smoking. And I never measure anything. I just put it in there and I stir it up, mix it up till it, what my dad would call, comes alive or crawl. But you can see what I mean, where it like comes alive, moves on its own. And then there's always the taste test. Yeah, about right. Some people like to smoke them with the hide on. I like to take the hide off, then you don't get that fishy taste. You wouldn't eat a steak with the hide on it. I like to put it in a crock. You don't get no plasticky taste out of a crock, I guess. It seems to keep it cooler. I have to put a little of this on the bottom first, and a layer of fish. Some people make a brine with water and salt, and you float an egg in it. Never done that. I guess this is how I learned how to do it. The fish have a certain amount of water in them, and it makes its own brine. Now we leave her sit for about 18, 20 hours, 24 hours. Cleaned out the cobwebs out of the smoker and got the rack out and brushed it off. And we're going to put a little light coat of oil on there to keep the fish from sticking to it. The salmon ain't too bad. They stick a little, but the lake trout, you wouldn't have to do this at all. There's enough oil in it. They normally don't stick. Should be good to go. Now we just got to lay them on there. That's what I was talking about earlier with making its own brine. They seem to be nice and firm. The salt did its job. I put the bigger stuff over the fire, the smaller ones further away. The bigger ones may have to stay in here a little longer. That's when it gets a little tough to get in here with the smoke and pull them out, the smaller ones. It'll start flaking apart a little bit. You'll see it, the fish will crack, you know, have some cracks, and it'll be dry. Nice golden brown color. And most of the time I just come in here and start eating some. We built this probably 20 years ago. And patterned after the old world way of just putting a fire in the bottom and adjusting the heat by how much wood you put in. And I use hard maple. You can use tag elder, hickory, and there's just all kinds of different stuff, apple wood, but I'll go back to the hard maple every time. It just works for me. Some meat that you do probably is better with hickory or apple wood, but I've had good luck with the hard maple. There's enough cracks and holes and stuff like that to let the smoke out, you might say, so you don't have just the same old smoke making creosote in there. I'll start the fire off with the dry maple, just to get some coals to keep the green stuff burning. Let that get going, and I'll put this green maple on there. We don't want a lot of heat right away, because you want the smoke to get into the meat before it gets, you know, like you sear a steak, all the juices and the seasoning you put on there stay in it. Well, if you sear the fish, get it too hot right away, in other words, it won't get the smoke then. So we like to keep it a low heat. Well, it's been in here for, well, smoking for probably 8 to 10 hours. And we just closed the smoker up last night and just left it till morning. And now we just take her off and get some beer and start eating. A lot of people like to leave the skin on, and right there, all that the oily, fishy, smelly taste is gone. That's all. You don't have that on your fish then. You got all fish you can eat, unless you want to eat the hide, but I normally don't. Yeah, it's a little bit more done than I wanted it to be, but it makes a difference with the outside temperature. With the amount of wood you put on. I used to smoke in my dad's, he had a cement block smoker, and no insulation whatsoever, so you would put more wood on. The insulating factor of the cedar 4x4s makes a difference. From here, we bring it in and put it in vacuum sealed bags and freeze it. Otherwise, it don't last very long, you know, in the freezer without having it airtight.
It's the middle of small game season, and whether you're heading out to the woods to fling lead at some grouse or hitting the water for ducks and geese, you're going to want to do it with a clean shotgun. Properly maintaining a shotgun is an obvious step for any gun owner. Here's some tips from Steve at UP Hunters Gunsmithing.
You can use your same solvent that you used on your rifle, but that doesn't address all the problems that you have with cleaning in a shotgun barrel. One of the big problems with a shotgun barrel is that each time you send a shot down the barrel, The wad cup from the shot shell will deposit a little bit of plastic on the choke area of your shotgun. Over time, it will actually constrict your choke on your shotgun so that you're not shooting the choke that you think you are. There's another product that you can use called wad solvent. Does a great job cleaning the bore, but it also dissolves any plastic that has been deposited in the area of the choke. When cleaning your shotgun, you want different cleaning rods. And here again, you don't want to use a loop. You want to use a jag. There are several different sizes. You want one that's appropriate for the size shotgun that you're using, whether it be 12, 20, 410. You also want to clean from the breech on your shotgun. If it's a semi-auto, most of them are relatively easy to take the barrel off of the receiver and clamp it securely in a padded vise and work from the breech end. As with your rifle, you start with a wet patch. Generally, when doing a double barrel, I do my both wet patches in each barrel first. That gives it time to soften up the plastic. Follow your wet patch with a brush, sized appropriately for the gauge that you're cleaning. Now you want to pass a dry patch through each bore. The black that you see on the patch is a combination of plastic and burned powder. Repeat the process. We're coming out fairly clean. One more application should make this particular shotgun ready to go.
Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. A few days after my hunt with Ross, he was lucky enough to bag his fall turkey. Congratulations to Ross on a successful hunt. Pick a day this week, give yourself a vacation, and spend some time in the woods. Like every other season here in the UP, fall is short, so don't put it off. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week, right here on Discovering.